Hey everybody, wanted to hop on here real quick and talk about this awesome effort going on over in Italy right now. It's something I've actually been wanting to mention on here for a minute because, as far as I'm concerned, efforts toward a general strike are pretty much the most important thing we can be doing with our lives uh, for the rest of our lives here in the Imperial Core. Um, it's you know extremely important not just for our own prospects as a class of working people, but also in regard to the climate crisis, which will control our ability to produce food. It's a pretty big deal. Not to mention like the lives that climate inaction costs, and etc. Um, and also, it's, as we have seen with Italy, it's extremely pertinent with slowing and stopping unjust war, which we have been shown time and time again, decade after decade, that we the military industrial complex just seems to be something that we are subject to, right? They're just gonna keep doing it. They've been committing genocide in our faces for over 700 days. This is not something we're just going to be able to vote away or expect them to grow a conscience and stop doing, right? We have to force them to stop it. And as regular working people, we don't have so many avenues to do that, but the general strike is one such avenue, and an extremely powerful one, because as a matter of fact, our ruling class cannot get our money, time, and resources if we're not producing it for them. Right? And it's a time honored tradition. In the United States, we've done these kind of things before. Our work is simply combating the forces of neoliberalism and the other forces that have sought to, I guess I'm trying to think of the right word, I guess destroy the capacity for labor organizing in the United States. Yeah, a lot to unpack. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive in so this video isn't 40 minutes long. So I saw a little while ago this post. People were talking about how Italian dock workers were threatening to shut down all of Europe if the Gaza aid flotilla is blocked. I would definitely recommend checking this out, but it reminded me of something I saw a little while ago. This was earlier this year. Indian port workers were refusing to load weapons for Israel's war. It kind of drives the point home about what I was saying. Like, they wouldn't be able to carry these wars out if they did not have our tax money or our labor, driving this machine, right? Oh, that reminds me. I need to find that quote. There's this speech by some guy way back in the day. He's talking about like the machine is like, oh man, I should have found that before I started recording this stuff. Let me see if I can find it real quick here. Yes, I might have found it. Yeah, Mario Savio. Let me pull that thing up. Bodies upon the gears. Let's see if we can just find a quick video real quick. This is probably a good one. Oops. Opened in another tab.
When the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part, you can't even passively take part, And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. There's a time when...
Yeah, pretty cool. Check the rest of it out. Check out the context surrounding it. Again, I don't want this to be 40 minutes, so I'm going to try to speed it up. Anyway, though, the point is that this is something that has lived in my head rent-free every single day that we've been watching this genocide unfold, because I remember when I was on the bus going to DC to protest it in November of 2023, I believe, I saw that somebody in the US government wrote that they were worried that the situation would become untenable here in the United States because people were pissed the hell off that we were involving ourselves in this genocide. And yet here we are, years later, we're overt fascism is unfolding moment by moment. And, it hasn't really shown any sign of halting in regard to the genocide department. So the prospects are not great in that regard. So it bothers me so much how the government recognized that the power that the working class has, and then the working class did not leverage it. And now there's, according to some accounts, around 700,000 dead over there. And again, like that's terrible. But like we can also apply that same criticism to the climate movements and stuff too. Like we're failing the future of humanity by not organizing as a class of workers in this country. It has to happen if we are to address the climate crisis in a responsible and just way. And I think a whole ass genocide is a good thing to rally around, just to start with, and then we can springboard from there on scaling justice into every part of our society, not just the climate and environmental side, but like all of it, because there's so much injustice woven into it if you kind of peel back the veneers of the decorum and the respectability that they like to pretend is this nation, instead of the disgusting shit that they have always been, right? That they've always subjected, the poor or black and indigenous people to, right? Not cool. But the thing is, the beautiful thing about it is that we have had this power all along, and we can leverage it, and they have been scared of us. That the whole, experiment of neoliberalism is effectively the ruling class showing us how scared they are of organized labor, right? They know damn well what it's capable of. That's why they attack it. That's why they, put so much time and energy and money into quelling organized labor, because they know what it means if we were to achieve this. So why not do it? They're basically telling on themselves of what will work by showing like what they're afraid of, because they're willing to put their capital up to crush it. And that very same thing is the thing that will also be instrumental in liberating Gaza, the rest of the global south that suffers under the boot of imperialism every single day. Our neighbors, our homeless neighbors, our food insecure neighbors, which, as I was saying on my last post, has been increasing over time. They don't have a plan for us in this country. They intend fully to let more and more of our neighbors and the people we love and care about fall through the cracks and suffer needlessly in the richest country in the history of the planet. All the while, they consolidate wealth and power while destroying our earth irreparably. Pardon the stutter. Like, this is not, I don't know how much clearer we can frame this kind of arrangement that we're living in, right? By some twist of fate, we're all alive right now. We have this capability to either be involved with moving toward justice in a real sense, or moving away from it, and to not act as, to basically give away our power and let those bastards at the top choose for us what our future's going to be. And they've shown us over and over and over with countless examples what that means for us as a class of working people, for everyone we love and care about, right? Like, it's go time. It's been go time. Like, I know I am on here talking about doom and gloom a lot of the time, but it's like, I want to there's like, I'm trying to like motivate kind of this way of conducting our lives, right, where our act of living is synonymous with resisting this status quo, because to not do so is to guarantee more needless suffering and death, right? Doesn't really sound like a great arrangement for our lives if the way we're living has that woven into it. But that's the thing. That's what American life always has been, right? At some point, either the environment or people in the global south or our neighbors here at home have had to foot the bill for this status quo and the injustice that's woven into it. And we have the power to stop that anytime if we get organized, right? It takes a little bit of effort. I'm going to talk about it later. I'm not just going to, I don't want to just self-righteously preach about this stuff. I want to inspire and motivate anybody who takes the time to listen to this, because it's possible and there are ways you can contribute, right? I'm kind of, I'm not going to say that I'm some like super smart or talented organizer or whatever, but there's threads I can pull at, right? The trick is finding the ones you can pull at and doing that. Because again, that's the least we can do for our neighbors in Gaza who are having bombs dropped on them so that a colonial entity like Israel can steal their land and resources. That's all this is. This is one colonial entity supporting another, right? Ask Black and Indigenous people what the last 400 years has been like in this country. Right? It's the same. It's the same. It's the same institution of a colonial society. It's been kicked into overdrive because of neoliberalism. Anyway, I'll quit preaching about that. Let's actually check out this Italy thing. Oh goodness, I've lost my link. there was one more. Where the heck did it go? Well, case in point, I'm stupid. Anyway, you can just search it up. There's a billion. Here. Nope, that's not it. That's the one I just had open. But there's a billion articles coming out about it recently. But all over. I wish I had my link open. There was one. Okay, well. Let's do routers. Who cares? Routers? I don't know how to say it. Yeah. Man, where did my link go? I swear I had one open. I don't know how the heck I managed to not... Hold on. Let me try to find it. Because that's crazy. That's just quacking crazy. Great. Where in the world? Maybe I'm tripping. All right, I gotta stop tripping. Okay, can't find it. All right, we'll carry on. There's a million different examples. The Honolulu one sounded cool. Let's check it out. Yeah. A nationwide strike in Italy called by the USB Union with the slogan, "Let's block everything." Actually, I think I am tripping. I think this is what I was going to read here. And I was just confusing this with an actual article. You'll have to forgive me. It's midnight. Yeah, I'm recording this right before I go to bed because I just feel so inclined to do so. Where's the article? It's just pictures. All right. Well, we fuck with that, I guess. Yeah, a nationwide strike in Italy called by the USB Union with the slogan, "Let's block everything," in solidarity with Gaza and calling for a halt to arms shipments to Israel. Same deal, yada yada. I'll just let this play while I'm reading. So it says, Italy was shut down for Gaza as more than 75 Italian cities participated in a nationwide general strike demanding an embargo on Israel and the severing of all ties. Protesters successfully blocked major infrastructures, including highways, train stations, and ports, effectively bringing the country to a standstill. Notice the repression just for doing that. Demonstrators called for an end to the ongoing genocide and condemned Italy's continued complicity in supplying weapons and maintaining economic, academic, and political ties with Israel. Authorities used batons, tear gas, and water cannons to disperse crowds. Strike involved every sector, from public transport and railways to schools and healthcare, drawing hundreds of thousands of participants. For an entire day, Italy came to a standstill, highlighting both the scale and the impact of nationwide protest. Yeah. So if they can do that, then why can't we? Right? Yeah. That's my point in mentioning this stuff, is that it's so possible. And that's what breaks my heart, is that there's so many people dying and suffering at home and abroad, and we could end it tomorrow just by organizing around issues that benefit us as a working class. The climate is a great one, right? And the environment, not having pollution. But there's many others. I'll go into them here. I've popped up Claude to kind of give me a little list of stuff that's nice and quick and easy. So again, this video is as short as I can make it because I love yapping. So that was, I'm not trying to use AI to be a dork. I'm trying to use it to save y'all's time. Anyway, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about this and then we'll jump back into the Italy thing. So I said, in addition to being able to slow or stop wars and international solidarity, what are other benefits working people stand to gain from becoming unified enough to perform a general strike? Consider things like increases in wages, healthcare prospects, and other policy wins. And then I was just like, share the most pertinent examples. So it declares a working class unified enough to execute a general strike would hold tremendous bargaining power. We'll get into why that's important in a moment. But it lists some of these significant potential gains. Immediate economic benefits, living wages. Historical general strikes have often won substantial wage increases. A unified workforce could demand wages indexed to actual cost of living. Imagine that. Potentially achieving the long-sought $25 to $30 an hour minimum wage in the United States. Universal health care. Imagine that. The ability to shut down the economy creates leverage to demand Medicare for all or similar systems, ending medical bankruptcy and job lock. Guaranteed paid leave, sick days, family leave, and vacation time matching international standards. Why the fuck not? Like, it just grinds my gears. This is like, our lives are needlessly squandered in this nation just because we don't dare to demand better for our neighbors. And again, we can't blame our neighbors for that. We are subject to a class of bastard rulers who have spent decades decimating our organizing capacity, right? We have to build it back. We need to be cognizant about how we're moving every single day to restore these kind of things, because again, our prospects as a class kind of in the toilet right now as business as usual carries on. We'll get into that. Anyway, structural labor rights. We could end at-will employment, protection from arbitrary firing, requiring just cause for termination. You know, retaliation is a great example there too. Why? It's kind of insane that we put up with our ruling class being able to do that and retaliate against us for daring to demand what we deserve, because we are the ones producing the profit in the first place. Anyway, sectoral bargaining, industry-wide wage negotiations rather than company-by-company battles, and the right to organize. They kind of said that already. But elimination of the right to work and employer interference in union efforts. Deeper systemic wins, wealth taxation and redistribution. Right there, that would solve so many things in this nation. And I'm not just saying that because I covet rich people or anything like that. The thing is rich people have a unique ability to command the direction of development in the nation. So if we want an end to war, better prospects for our neighbors who are disadvantaged or historically marginalized, or, you know, the ability to grow food with a livable biosphere, we need to have a say in how capital develops and interacts with our world. Right now, we don't. Right now, only about 10% of the richest of us, people who have completely different incentives from us as regular working people, have that capability. We are subject to the imagination of a bunch of rich bastards. And again, that's what this country's always been. It started as an experimental tax shelter for, you know, wealthy white dudes. Hasn't really changed too much, right? There's been concessions made when there's had to be. The structure of it largely is unchanged. Anyway, public ownership, nationalizing or creating public options for utilities, internet, banking, and other essential services. Again, why the hell not? I think AI is a great, funnily enough, a great thing to do here, because we're subject to the consequences of AI in a massive way, right? Massively affecting our lives. And we have no say in any of it. And it's up to a bunch of private entities rather than a state. Similar process with oil companies. We are all subject to their stuff. They're a private entity. Why the heck can't we smack them across the head and say, hey, you bastards, you're destroying our planet. We're going to nationalize you and use your infrastructure and resources for stuff that's actually good for the earth or our neighbors. Imagine. Like, again, there's a reason in almost every single successful decolonial experiment all throughout the global south, nationalization was a big part of the movement, right? The wins that they gained. That's something we can and should demand here in our own nation. If there is the thing to say about our administration being so terrible that there's no point to nationalizing them, but something to think about at least. It goes on to say the 4-day work week, reduced hours without reduced pay, redistributing productivity gains to workers. Again, imagine. It would literally help the climate if we worked less. Our lives would be better. We would not be squandered. There's no good reason for us to keep at this psychopathic productivity pace when our biosphere is buckling and on the eve of collapsing, right? Irreparably. That's complete nonsense. And then also housing guarantees, rent control, social housing programs, and limits on corporate ownership of residential property, which we have seen exploding recently. Again, it's like, if you have even the slightest finger on the pulse with regard to just housing, it's like, what the hell are we doing? Anyway, the mere credible threat of a general strike often wins concessions. Employers and governments frequently capitulate rather than risk total economic shutdown. This unified power could fundamentally rebalance the relationship between capital and labor. I'm going to just real quickly, just to drive the point home, can you explain how the above was instrumental in the work in regard to regular working class people winning concessions during / after the Great Depression? I should have asked it to be concise, because this video is already freaking 20 minutes. Oh, 26. Good God. Anyway, maybe I'll just scroll through this real quick. If you want to pause it, do it. I've talked about this stuff before. Strikes work. That's the short version. Oh, here we go. Key lesson. The ruling class made concessions not from kindness, but because the alternative, continued strikes, factory occupations, and potential revolution, was worse for them than sharing wealth and power. Working people's willingness to shut down production forced the creation of the modern welfare state and middle class, which, again, didn't solve the issues. Revolution sounds a lot better to me. But anyway, that's in effect what we're living through now. Is instead of capitulation from our ruling class, they're giving us insistence. That's fascism. That's the marriage of corporate power and state power. We're living in that. We have been for a long time, frankly. Longer than most of us have been alive. Right? That's where we find ourselves. And again, we can either act accordingly or slowly watch everything and everyone we love and care about be sacrificed in the name of profit for a bunch of rich assholes who are monsters, who we'll never meet, who don't live in our communities, who have a completely different reality from us. Our lives and everything we love and care about gets to be sacrificed just so they can have a bigger number or another yacht. It's insane. We need to fight it. We need to organize. Again, I don't want to be doom and gloom. I want to motivate y'all. This is a beautiful thing. We have the opportunity to really turn things around. That's awesome, right? And the process of organizing is awesome itself as well. There's beautiful moments to be shared in community, in making things better. I have a graphic over here from the Cooperation Jackson dual power model. All these things that we can organize toward. Sorry it's so crusty, by the way. But all these things that we can organize toward. There's community, there's love, there's creativity that we can exercise. It's awesome. All those things are awesome. So I really want to stress, it's not doom and gloom. It's only doom and gloom if we don't act and fight. Anyway, going and moving forward, we can talk about this more, but I'd hope everyone that follows me keeps up with these things I keep spitting out, at least knows about Cooperation Jackson, because I find their dual power framework to be the most grounded thing that I've ever encountered across years of keeping a finger on the pulse with this stuff. It's awesome. It's real, unequivocally very good. And yeah, we should check it out. Anyway, I'll keep yapping about that in a second. Let's get back to the Italy stuff. So Perfect Union, a really cool page, has posted this video about it. I've yet to even watch it. I just saw that they posted it and was already going to make a video because of this one. So let's check this out. Let me just refresh it real quick. Ooh. I also love this comment here. Good stuff.
Today, where dock workers have called for a strike in solidarity with the global Samud flotilla and with Gaza.
Noi tutti e tre siamo lavoratori del porto di Genova, lavoriamo in banchina con le navi che da Genova transitano 14-15 mila contenitori verso Israele all'anno, e con il nostro blocco abbiamo detto che se toccano la flottiglia e succedesse qualcosa di grave ai nostri compagni che sono in mezzo al mare, ovviamente noi blocchiamo tutto e non facciamo transitare nulla verso Israele.
Io lavoro nel porto di Genova da 29 anni. Se provare a fermare questo traffico di morte significa dover fermare ogni tipo di traffico verso Israele, da e per Israele, benissimo, allora noi fermeremo tutto, veramente non partirà più un chiodo verso Israele, perché se la loro logica è affamare le persone, la nostra logica è quella di non commerciare più con Israele.
Soprattutto devono lasciargli lo spazio per poter entrare a Gaza, portare questi aiuti umanitari, anche solo per sfamare bambini, aiutare medicinali, cibo, devono lasciarli passare.
Nello specifico, questo sciopero che stiamo facendo oggi in 75 oltre piazze italiane creerà un disagio alle merci che dovranno andare in Israele. Intanto in questo momento i porti sono fermi, quindi non c'è movimento di navi.
The dock workers in Genoa called a general strike, and they, as well as teachers and public transit workers in cities across Italy, walked off the job today.
La classe operaia negli ultimi decenni ha un po' lasciato perdere la coesione che aveva tra i lavoratori. Il fatto di essere qua oggi in tanti e così tanti posti di lavoro che sono stati fermati è un segnale anche per dire che la classe operaia si sta rimettendo insieme. Quindi se oggi stiamo lottando per la Palestina, questa unità di persone vuol portare ad essere anche una lotta per un futuro lavorativo migliore per tutti quanti.
2 in 3 non cambiamo il mondo, in tanti riusciamo a cambiare.
Il Portuale ce l'ha insegnato, lottare
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Oh, also, talking about general strikes, I probably should have played this one a little sooner, but also from this page, really, this is the creator here. Definitely check her out. She's got some really cool stuff going on. Really cool, really good stuff. But anyway, we'll just play this real quick in case you don't know the history of general strikes. I wouldn't blame you if you don't, because it's not like they parade around teaching this kind of shit. But yeah, let's check that out.
If every worker in America refused to show up tomorrow. No trains, flights, Amazon deliveries, no teachers or nurses, the country would grind to a halt. And that's the power of a general strike. So a general strike is a work stoppage where workers from multiple industries simultaneously cease work, not just over specific workplace issues, but to demand broad social, political, or economic change. It's the ultimate tool of collective action, where workers across a society in every sector halt work to achieve solidarity-driven, large-scale transformation. Historically, general strikes have been one of the most effective means for labor movements to force systematic change. So why don't we see them in the US anymore? Because they were outlawed. In the past, when American workers tried, the government panicked. In 1919, 65,000 workers in Seattle shut down the city. No police, no bosses, just workers running things on their terms. And what happened? They were called un-American, Bolsheviks, and dangerous radicals. And the government sent in the National Guard, armed troops. Then in 1934, general strikes in Minneapolis and San Francisco paralyzed entire cities and won massive victories. The ruling class took note and gave workers the right to unionize in 1935. But in 1947, Congress struck back with the Taft-Hartley Act, making it illegal for unions to coordinate general strikes. Their goal? Make sure we never see another Seattle or Minneapolis again. But just because the US banned them doesn't mean that workers elsewhere stopped. In 2023, when France tried to raise the retirement age, millions of workers shut down transportation, energy, and public services, forcing the government to backtrack. So what's stopping workers here? The laws written to keep us divided, but workers are fighting back. Some of the biggest unions in the US are playing the long game, lining up their contracts to expire on May 1st, 2028. International Workers' Day, which would set them up to walk out on strike at the same time. Unions already in? and more have the opportunity to join this year. This is huge. Coordinating contract expirations is a direct challenge to the system that keeps workers from striking together. I know a general strike sounds impossible in the US. That's by design. But history shows that when workers stand together, we win. Whether or not 2028 leads to a full general strike, the fact that workers are even trying, this is a massive shift in a collective mentality. If you're in a union, or even just thinking about organizing your workplace, pay attention. Because May Day 2028 might be the day US workers remind the world what solidarity really means. What would happen?
Yeah, huge. The May 1st, 2028 date, again, people do say, oh, it's too far. Oh, we need it now. Sure we do, but we need to lay the framework. We need to build the dual power to start and sustain an effort like a general strike. We don't have that now. I would love for it to be sooner. But we need to, that again, to me, with regard to the climate, right? That is the most important thing we can do with our lives, is organize and really make the most of this time, to try to do this general strike May 1st, 2028. Putting my doom and gloom hat back on, I really kind of look at that as like our last chance, really. I think we've already crossed many thresholds that should not have been, that have cost the lives of too many people just from the climate, not to mention, all the deaths annually from, moment to moment from imperialism and all that. But like the climate is like a whole nother ball game, right? And it's a permanent one. It locks us into that being our future. And we have, us in the global north, I feel like we have a very strong responsibility to understand what that means to live in the imperial core and have the ability to address things and do that. Again, if not for the environment, do it for the anti-war capability, do it for the love of your neighbor, so that you and them can have food, have housing, have healthcare, have education, have clothes on your back. It's like we're playing, we have this, like, I feel like in America there's this idea that everything it'll go back to normal eventually. They'll figure it out. No, dude. We're cooked. They do not have our best interests in mind. They are fine watching us suffer and die. They always have been. It's just that most people have been able to stay afloat despite it. And as time goes on, as we see in this lovely chart, it's not a good trend. Right? I wish this had it up to 2025. I would love to see how that would look. Anyways, we'll go ahead and keep, I'll just keep running through these tabs here. This is just something I wanted to mention, here, this one does go to 2025. You can see the share of wealth by the percentage in, I believe this is just in the United States. Bottom 50%. Not really been doing too great. Not really been doing too awesome. What about the top 10%? Holy shit. Right? That's pretty crazy. Yeah, you remember what I was saying earlier about how that gives them the ability to command the direction of the nation and stuff, and the productive capacity of everything? Yeah. There's a problem with that. Right? Jason Hickel has some wonderful material on that. He was just on a podcast recently called Better Future, I think it is, with Michael M. I can't remember how to say his last name. But very cool stuff. Definitely would recommend checking it out if you want to hear more yapping. Going back to this, we see the trend. business as usual is a race to the bottom. It's nosediving. Even on paper, right? Not even considering the environmental constraints. It's just silly. It just doesn't work. These people at the top, again, it works great for them, so they use their money and power to essentially artificially keep this stuff going, right? It's the kick the can down the road approach. They don't care who falls through the cracks as a consequence of their irresponsible decisions. That's just collateral to them. That's the price of doing business. But for us, that's our neighbors. That's people we love and care about. It could be us, right? It could be us, our very selves. And it's our priceless environment being sacrificed. You know, I'm a member of the Wake Forest Conservation Group specifically because I have watched my community, my priceless environment, be sacrificed in the name of slapping down another subdivision or a shopping center that we don't necessarily need, that definitely isn't the best use of this resource of land. You know, we also do the same thing with regard to energy. While I'm on that soapbox, we have these precious resources and don't treat them the way they need to be treated. If you would like some more information about that, Nate Hagans has some really interesting work in regard to how we as a status quo kind of relate to energy and how that is completely goofy, for lack of better terms. This here is a chart I actually put together. It kind of covers all this stuff I've been yapping about. It compares a couple of different indexes and a couple of different percentages. So you can kind of see it's quite similar to this. Kind of this one here. You know, up top we've got the top 10% income share. Over here we've got the top 1%. You can see how that parallels with union membership. And then you compare that to the cost of living, which increases way quicker than the compensation index. So what this shows us is that regular working people are getting screwed. This is absolute abject exploitation. There's no other way to slice it. These bastards over here are getting fat off of our misery, effectively, right? The squandering of our lives, you know, and not to mention our environment. But again, our neighbors, everyone we care about, this is bullshit. There's no other way to slice it. And again, consider what that means as a trajectory for our future, right? What about those of us who have kids or want to have kids? What about our grandchildren down the line, right? We got to think about, you know, the people who originally authored the democracy that inspired this country, the Haudenosaunee people, you know, with the Iroquois Confederacy and the Great Law of Peace and all that. You know, they were thinking about 7 generations ahead, making consensus-based decision-making like ideas. They decided that for the most benefit to us as humans and our natural world, which we depend on and also gives us everything we need, so we should treat it with respect. They decided that what's best as an outcome, what creates the best outcomes for that, is thinking 7 generations ahead. We think in terms of quarterly profits, right? That's what these guys think. They are not thinking about our grandchildren. They are not thinking about you and me, right? They are not thinking about shit. They are cynical bastards. They could care less if my pristine nature down the street gets wiped out because they had to put another shopping center, because that's what capital demanded, right? Even though we know that the system is a race to the bottom. You know, they don't put this stuff on the news, right? But it's happening. It's happening. That's why they continue to demand. That's why this is happening. They continue to demand more and more and more of our environment. They continue to demand more and more and more of our time with our productivity, right? They demand this. They demand the cost of living to increase because it's a race to the bottom and they have all the money and power, so they're not going to be making concessions. So it's our class that has to do that. And that always sucks, but it sucks extra when we consider in a existential threat like the climate crisis or unjust wars, all around the global south and exploitation and imperialism and all that. Like there's no justifying it. It's disgusting. So like once we really look at it and really understand it, it's like there can't, you'll feel like this guy. It's like, how can you justify this kind of arrangement, right? Anyway, we'll keep on going. So this graphic is actually from Jackson Rising. It's a book about Cooperation Jackson. Pretty cool. I actually have the PDF of the Redux edition of it. So, I mean, if you want it, hit me up. I'm also going to make an audiobook for it eventually. Right now, I'm actually doing a different one talking about militant labor unionizing. I'm telling you guys, like, this is like, we need to spend our lives doing this. We are alive right now. This is what we have the ability to do. We cannot just allow ourselves to be numbed out, hunkering down, lost in the frameworks that these guys, the rich, put in front of our faces, like, getting lost in sports or entertainment or, whatever kind of stuff, video games, etc. That stuff is there to, distract us from this kind of stuff, in my humble opinion. There obviously entertainment has a place. It's always had a place in human history, always, but it's been almost like bastardized by the ruling class, right? They've and we almost are conditioned to say, okay, go to work and then go home and consume and then go back to work and then go home and consume. It's like, this is a blatantly unsustainable status quo. It's really easy to get caught up in it. It's really easy to feel like we can't do anything, so let's just enjoy the time we have left and, fuck it. Everything else, we can just whatever, not put time and energy and resources into it, because what's the point? But I'm telling you, they would not be spending all the time, money, and resources themselves on crushing these efforts and on the propaganda to shape our beliefs that there's no point to do this, or even that there's nothing wrong, right? Because think about it, like, talking about the Charlie Kirk fella, right? A lot of his platform and a lot of conservative platforms try to insist that there isn't even climate change happening, right? This thing that's an existential threat to people now, that has killed my neighbors in Acapulco, that has killed my neighbors with Hurricane Helene, right? It's not up for debate. It's happening, right? And we can see the projections, right? We can see what this means, for the climate. And also we can see the projections for this economic system in regard to well-being as a class, right? Like look at this. Not good. Look at this. Not good. These, it's like, anyway, let's carry on. Actually, yeah, that was everything. Cool. So yeah, we ended up making it to 50 minutes. Of course we did. I cannot make a short video to save my life, but at least this one I can post on Instagram. The last one was too freaking long. Anyway, thanks for checking this out. Best wishes to everyone as we move forward. Please do check out Cooperation Jackson and the dual power framework that they use, the build and fight formula. If you want even more stuff to check out, there's the Black Socialists in America. They have a really cool website that is also really grounded in the way that the Cooperation Jackson stuff is. And of course, if you or anyone you know wants to organize their workplace or their communities or whatever, hit me up. I'm always here to do that. I really do believe that is like our instrumental work in this time. And again, not from a self-righteous place. Like, really, I don't want to just be preaching nonsense. You know, it's like, this is a grounded thing. We have to win as a class. We have to. There's no other alternative, right? Otherwise, people we love are going to be subject to suffering and death. That's just the reality of the situation we're in, right? And we can either play our hand that we've been dealt to the best of our ability, or we can not do that. But to not do it, you know, guarantees suffering for the global south, guarantees suffering for our neighbors here at home, can possibly guarantee, you know, real consequences to not just human life, but all life on Earth with regard to the climate, like we already have seen. You know, like, we're in a pivotal time for the planet. I guess closing thoughts are, again, to address the doom and gloom, because my last post I feel like was really doom and gloomy. You know, there have been people who have been fighting hard as hell, who have even been giving their lives all throughout history, facing worse odds than what we face now. It's up to us to keep carrying the torch and embody that sense of love for our neighbors and love for justice and truth, and being in tune with this planet that was so gracious to give us bodies and everything that these bodies are going to need for the rest of our lives. And, you know, this wonderful place, right? It's truly a miracle that it exists. And it's being squandered by people who don't see it as a miracle, just see it as a thing to extract from. You know, if there's going to be one prevailing status quo, we might have try to spend our lives establishing one that is in service of life rather than harming it and treating it like it's just something to be extracted from. You know, I've seen it hurt people that I know. Like I said, you know, every day there's been needless suffering that I've had to watch here in the United States, not, you know, but especially, you know, all across the global south with regard to economic imperialism and needless war and climate problems. I could go on and on about that, but I'll wrap it up here. Thanks if you checked it all out. I really appreciate that, and best wishes. And always here if you want to talk about organizing community, workplace, any of that stuff, even nonprofit spaces. Some people disparage them for not being radical enough. I certainly understand that. I still think it's useful. Anyway, best wishes, and yeah, Godspeed.